hypnotized by the sounds I'm breathing in. Hold tight, chemicals collide. Hold tight, hold tight, hold tight. Dripping lights paint the skies, all because of you. Dripping lights paint the skies, only you can make me move. You can make me move. Can make me move. You can make me move. Can make me. So alive, make it last forever. Stop in time, yeah, I'm surrendering. Hold tight, chemicals collide. Hold tight, hold tight, hold tight. Dripping lights paint the skies, all because of you. Dripping lights paint the skies, only you can make me move. You can make me move. Can make me move. Can make me move.
Hey, what's going on guys, Darius here and welcome to a new tutorial, and in this tutorial we will be learning to do something like this. Now this is some really nice artwork from Firewatch, and it's a new upcoming game and you can check it out at firewatchgame.com. Now I'm not sponsored by them or anything, I'm just trying to teach you how this thing goes. This is just a great example of how the lasso tool in Photoshop is just an amazing tool, and you can do something so simple yet so cool. So I'm not sure who the artist is, but he did a great job. This is very basic and it's mostly just about selecting things and filling them with color. We're going to learn some new stuff in Photoshop CC, like generating trees and using them as brushes, so we don't have to hand draw all the trees here. I'm going to teach you a bit of shading here, you know, on the mountains, and yeah, let's see what we got. This is just a great method to get you started, you know, get your art blood pumping, and to just have some fun, you know, make something creative. Things don't have to be that complicated to be amazing. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is make a new file. So file new, and you can just select the width and the height that you want. I went for wallpaper size, you know, my wallpaper size. Pixels, make sure it's pixels, you know. RGB color, background colors doesn't matter because we're going to change that anyway. 8-bit, and okay, and you're going to have that. Right here I have already one prepared, you know, and I'm going to use my crop tool here, you know, to just make it a bit smaller. Press enter, and this is going to be my canvas. I'm going to fill it with the background color like in the image. The first thing that we need to do now, you know, creative wise, is to get some colors, and I'm going to take the colors from this image. It has a really nice and warm feel to it. I like the values here, I like everything going on. So if I click on this tiny color block here, I get this color picker here, and I can just click on whenever I want, you know, and it will take the color here. So I click on the first color here and I add to swatches, and once you click this button, you can name your color and it will add it here in the swatches panel. I already did this. So first click the image, click on the color on the image, then add to swatches, then click on the next step and add to swatches, on the next step add to swatches, and see how it's getting lighter and lighter as we go further back, because we're sampling colors from this image. There's also online tools, you know, that you get your color palette from the image. I'm sorry, my mouth is a bit dry. And you can just sample the colors with that one. You can see and download the palette. So I have them here. This is the first one, and it goes in a row, you know, from darker to brighter. I'm going to change my background color right now, you know. This is the background, my background layer, it's all white. I'm going to pick this one, the last color, which is the background color in this image. And now we can already start with our mountains and stuff here. So let's get started. You're going to have to grab your lasso tool, and let me just grab my tablet really quick. There we go. Now I'm on my tablet. You can also use the mouse, obviously. This doesn't require much skill, so go for it. And as in the image, you see that there's various sections, you know, and each section is on a different layer. So the darkest one here is on one layer, and it's in front because it's the one in focus, you know. And as it goes further away, there's this atmosphere, you know, that makes things have some depth, you know, and it slowly fades away. Sort of like when you're looking at some mountains and they're all blue and hazy, you know, so this haze, this fog is kind of covering up the details, you know, so you're not exactly seeing the details on the mountain. So yeah, let's just start by making the first layer. Make a new layer here. There's a new layer button here, and just start making sort of like shaky kind of shapes here. You know, this is gonna be your frontal shape. There we go. And now just move it around here, and there you go. You have a selection. Make sure that you select your paint bucket tool now, pick the darkest color, you know, that you sample from the image, and click here. There you go. There we go. Now you can also click here, select deselect, or press Ctrl and D on the keyboard. And we have our first layer here. So for the next step, we have to make another layer, but this time layer number 2 is going to be under layer number 1. So we don't actually go over this darker one. So just do the same process, just select like a shaky kind of mountain-y shape, you know. There we go. Doesn't have to be perfect. And just select the bottom area, and we have another selection. Bucket tool, and now we select the next color. And there we go. This is the next color that we added to our shape. Now we repeat the process with the others, just like this. Just going to do this again. Let me just make it a bit more precise, you know, a bit more edgy. There we go. There we go. Just slowly. And select the bottom area and fill it with the next color that you saved in your swatches. Now you have a lot of colors, you know, this can be green, for example. You can make a green forest, a green landscape. You can also move your landscape, you know, up and down, you know, the height, you can change it. Right now it's a bit smaller here. Let me just make it a bit wider. There we go. Press enter. And I'm gonna move it a bit down and just say if I like that. And now I'm just make a new layer and do the same process. We don't have many of these to go, so I'm just going to move these up and down a bit, you know, so they fade out. So let me just grab layer 2, just put it a bit down, and layer number 3, 2, there we go. So it's a bit lower, you know. I want a pretty low horizon line. And now we can pass on to layer 4 and just start and grab our lasso tool and do the next step again. There we go. I'm gonna start from here now. There we go. And there we go. I'm gonna start making it a bit bigger, like here. Just a bit jaggedy, you know. Really important. There we go. Select the area and fill it with the next color. Let's see, is it this one or is it this one? Okay, it's this one. So that looks pretty nice. I really like the result. Let me see if I can change something. I feel like these 3 lines are a bit too much like the same, you know. So I'm gonna grab layer 2 and I'm just going to add a bit of detail here. Just gonna make it a bit higher. And I'm going to grab my brush tool. Let me just reset my brushes here. There we go. So we have our default brushes. And I'm going to hold Alt and sample the color, make it a bit bigger, and just fill it in. Just going to grab my lasso tool again by pressing L, and just do the same changes, you know, with the other layers. Like layer 3, I want to cut from it, you know. There we go. So it's not like the others. Just delete, or you can add a layer mask if you want to, but I don't feel like it's necessary. These are just filled in shapes, so that looks pretty nice. I'm quite satisfied with it. Okay, now to add the last layer of these planes. There we go. Let me just select this area. There we go. Gonna go a bit under with these. A bit jagged, just like that. And gonna go a bit higher with this. There we go. Select the area and leave it. And now just fill it with the color. There we go. Let me just change the color here. Was it this one? I think it was this one. Yep, that one. Now we got a pretty nice landscape going on. Let's add some mountains. Let's check out some trees. Let me see if we can do some changes around here, you know, because we can always do revisions. There we go. I want to erase part of this frontal, the darkest, you know, layer. There we go. I wanted to have some variation, and just delete that. And there we go. We had some nice variation going on there. Very nice. I like it. Okay. Now let's pass on to the mountains in the background. So which tool are we going to use for the mountains? You guessed it, the lasso tool. Now mountains have a shape like this, like a very triangular shape, so we're going to make a new layer. And going to try to keep the triangular shape going on, but still make it a bit jagged, you know, so it has that texture to it, that detail. So just like this. There we go. And we're gonna probably do something like this here, you know, continuation. And there we go. This is our mountain shape, and we're going to grab our color here and fit it in. There we go. And oops, there's something wrong here. The mountain seems to blend with my 5th layer. That means I skipped a color. So I'm going to grab layer number 3, which is the layer that doesn't have the right color, and I'm going to click on this icon here. So I'm going to teach you in case it happens to you. This is the lock transparent pixels icon. See how there's a lock there next to your layer? That means you can only color inside of the layer. So layer number 3, this is my layer number 3 here. I'm going to pick this color here. There we go. And fill it in. And see, now it makes more sense. And I'm going to do the same with the 4th. There we go. That should be the color. Without it disappearing, you have to click on the 2nd icon here on top. So now let's add more mountains in the background. There we go. You can add some detail, you know, you don't have to be shy about your detail. Add some mountains here, you know, just leave it like that. There we go. And now we're going to grab our brush tool or your paint bucket tool. Gonna make it bigger and just fill it in with the color that I want. There we go. Just gonna brush them in. And there you have it. We have our mountains in the background. Let's pass on to shading on the mountains. So for shading, we're still going to use the lasso tool, but this time we're going to make a new layer above our mountains layer. Right click and create a clipping mask. And just like locking transparent pixels, you can only work inside of the mountain layer. So if we make a shape outside, it will still stay inside of the mountains. I'm just going to unlock this, and let's grab our lasso tool. And now we're going to select this color here, which is the brighter mountain thingy color. And we're just going to select a side, you know, where we know that the colors, that the light, sorry, it's coming and hitting the mountain, you know. There we go. And just put some color in. And see, the mountain now has a light just hitting it. And we're going to do the same here for the others. You know, make it a bit jagged. Just going to select them all here. There we go. And this one here is going to have something small there. This one's going to have some here. There we go. And this one too. And there we go. Bit of jaggedness. There we go. And just brush them in. Just brush them all in. There we go. And as you can see, your mountains now have some awesome lighting. Let me just fix this one here. I don't like how it's curved a bit. I'm just going to zoom in, and I'm just going to go into detail a bit, you know, like this. Just going to brush it back in. And I'm still using the lasso tool, nothing special, and I'm just brushing in with the brush tool. There we go. Your mountains now have some really nice shading. And now we're going to make a layer in the background, and this is going to be our clouds, and we're going to use the lasso tool, you guessed it. And we're going to use this light color here. There we go. We're going to select that, and now just make shapes like this, you know, in the background. There we go. These are going to be your clouds, and just brush them in. Just brush in the clouds, and there you go. You have your clouds. There we go. Obviously you can do this more accurate. I'm just trying to go for speed and hopefully retain quality here, you know. Just gonna go here and put some of these clouds. There we go. We have some nice clouds in the background. We got our nice landscape here. Now let's pass on to the trees. So for the trees, you don't actually need to go and download some brushes, because you can make your own in Photoshop CC. If you don't have Photoshop Creative Cloud CC, then feel free to just go and search DeviantArt, for example, and just download some brushes. Let's make a new layer, since this is Photoshop CC, and then make a selection with your rectangular marquee tool. Select the whole area, and then right click, and then fill. And here, select pattern, and then doesn't matter what custom pattern you have. And the blending mode, normal, opacity 100, then go to scripted patterns, and then select tree, and click OK. And you're going to get into a panel now where you can actually make your own trees. Now I set here, I'm just going to disable these for a second. They're disabled by default, you know. You can make any trees you want. There's sakura trees, there's ficus, there's shrubs, palm trees, whatever you want. For this, I'm going to use a pine tree, yeah? I'm going to use the pine tree. And the good thing is that each time you generate a tree, it's different, you know? It's random. Now, you need to make a brush, so it has to be all black, you know? So click on Use Custom Color for Leaves and select Pitch Black. And the same thing for the branches. Now we got the silhouette of a tree. And now just click on OK and wait. You can also change the light direction, but that doesn't affect a silhouette, you know. So just click OK and wait. Now this is gonna take a bit, and just see you in a second. Okay, there we go. There's our tree. It worked out really well. And now we need to turn this into a brush. We need to have a white background. So just make a new background on top of your original background, a new layer, sorry, on top of your original background layer, and just fill it in with white, pure white. And now just hide by clicking on the eyes of the layer, everything else. Now go to Edit and define brush preset. And there you go, it gives you a brush. You have a brush. If I go into my brush tool right now, I have it. There we go, the last one. I can actually just paint trees now. I can select any color I want and just paint trees. You know, I can put some here, and this is really a time saver. Now we can delete this tree. We don't need it anymore, and just unhide all the layers and make a new layer on top. And this is going to be dedicated to we're going to make a new layer, you know, for each tree that we make here. Not each tree, each trees section, you know, because each of these layers will have their own trees with their own colors. So it's not going to work out if we make everything on one single layer. So we're going to start by making a new layer, you know, and this is on the first area here, the front area, you know. We're going to hold Control and select these, and Control and G to group them. So this is going to be one, you know, and this is going to be the trees, there we go. And let's make this brush smaller, you know. You can also right click here and just make it smaller and bigger. And now we're going to play a bit with the shape dynamics and the general options of the brush, you know, so it fits, so we can just put it in nicely and smoothly. Because if I were to just click now, you know, let me just sample the color by holding Alt. I'm going to sample this color. This works, you know, I can just click around, but this is going to take a lot of time, so we need some scattering, you know. Thankfully, Photoshop does this really easily, so we just go on to our brush settings thingy here, and we click on the spacing and just drag it, you know, make a bit more space, and go on Shape Dynamics and put the size jitter to about 100. And there we go. And now we are just going to start brushing around and just fill the area in with trees. There we go. You can definitely see the size jitter just kicking in, making smaller and bigger trees. And there we go. You can also delete some trees, you know. You can grab your eraser tool. There we go. Oh, by the way, when you don't want to do this every time, because if you select another brush, it's going to reset the settings. So just go here with your brush selected, you know, and then new brush preset. Capture brush size in preset. Okay, there we go. You don't have to capture the size if you don't want to. You can just make it bigger later, you know. Now just grab your eraser tool and just click on the brush that you just made and just start erasing what you don't need, you know. There we go. Where you don't want trees to be, you know, make some space maybe in between. There we go. Over there. And grab your brush again and just brush it. There we go. I'm gonna make a smaller one right about here, you know. There's not just big trees, there's also small ones. There you have it. So the first area, it's done. Now we can make a new layer on top of layer number 2. Hold Control, select them and group them. Group number 2. This is going to be our trees. And we're going to do the same again. Now I'm going to speed up the process a bit. But you guys know the drill. It's the same thing. So I'll see you in a bit. Check that out, that looks fantastic. I am quite satisfied with the result. If you find some imperfections, then feel free to just fix them, like this dot here, you know. Just grab your eraser, just grab a normal one, and just grab this one, just erase them, you know. And it definitely feels like a forest. It definitely feels like something that I would want. You can also, for example, add a cabin somewhere, or you know, some fire. Someone's making something, maybe some smoke around. You know, some white smoke coming and going up here, for example. And this guy, he did an awesome job. I like how he made this ranger watch tower thingy going on here. You can also add these birds here. There are bird brushes online. You can find them easily. You know, add anything that you want basically. I want to make these trees a bit bigger here in the front. So if I'm going to change that, I'm just going to make a bigger brush, you know, like this, and then I'm going to just put it here, you know, make some bigger trees so it stands out more, you know, so we're covering more area. There we go, just like that. There we go. Gonna make a big one here, you know. There we go. Because I really like a lot of trees, a lot of vegetation. You can add more in the front too, and that looks pretty nice. I'm pretty satisfied with the result. Now you can obviously add more vegetation, more variations. You can add some more lighting if you want on the mountains, make it brighter, make it different colors, make it however you want. You can add people, for example. You can add planes, birds. You can make nighttime and just like give it a blue tone, for example. You know, just enjoy and have fun. You don't have to be super accurate with the lasso tool. Actually, it's pretty nice when you just experiment and stuff just comes out. So yeah, just have fun, and I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and I will see you guys in the next one. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more awesome content. Check out the links in the description for all your graphic needs. Also, don't forget to follow me on Facebook, where I post my recent work like concept art and recent manipulations that do not make it in a video. Alright, see you guys later.
Well, hi everybody. I wanted to do a video that was me actually talking while I was doing it. It was a little bit more in depth. I wanted to make sure that you understood what I was doing. So I actually have a design that I've been working on for a client, and it's a logo. Eventually we actually didn't end up going with this design or anything on this page, but I wanted to kind of show you how I work when I do logo work and custom typography. So everything that I sketched on the screen is basically straightforward, just me playing around. I don't like some of these, they're a little abstract, but this is just a pencil sketch. So keep in mind, it was just trying to get the idea out. I wasn't trying to do anything really specific. And I sent him this to the client, and he basically came back and said, these I don't really like. So I thought, well, I kind of like some of these, and I think it'd be fun to just play around with them, and I'm going to wait to release a video until after I've actually finished working with the client, but I thought I'd record these while I was just had them up. And I wanted to kind of talk through some of these, because I think when I do the videos, a lot of times what happens, I just record them and people are like, oh, you're going way too fast. And I usually have some music track going. Usually I don't want to talk, but I think it would just be fun if you guys maybe followed along with me. So I might fast forward through some of the parts if they're a little bit more boring, but for the most part I'm going to show you what I do after I get the initial approval from the client. So I really liked these two right here. Okay, so what I've done so far, obviously, that you can see, is that I've actually sketched everything out here, and I've scanned it and then dropped it into my Illustrator template. For the most part, everything's pretty much set up in Illustrator. That's pretty basic. I don't do anything really specific. I don't have any kind of special actions. As far as the things that I am using outside as peripherals, I do have a tablet that I use, and I use the pen tool a lot, and that's pretty much it. I don't really have anything other than that. So it's okay. You can still, if you want to follow along and use a mouse and click away, you can do that as well. But the first thing that I usually do is when I drag it in here, I'll just lock this layer. I'll create a new layer. And what I'll do is if you double click on this layer, you can actually come up with the layer options panel, and I just hit dim image to 50%. Now what that's gonna do for me is it'll make it light enough so that I can actually come in here and start penning out these things with the pen tool. So that's why I do it. You don't have to, obviously, whatever you prefer. But also over here, if you can see where the little icons are with a little eyeball, if you go ahead and actually click that, it actually takes away, makes the layer disappear. But if you hold down Command and then click on it, it does the little clear eye, which is pretty useful. It'll just show just your outline, and you can do that as well with other commands. And again, don't get too caught up if I might do something that you think is weird, or you're like, oh, I know a quicker way to do that. Honestly, I know a quicker way too, but I'm just trying to show you the basic stuff, so please don't comment the hell out of this video and tell me all the things I'm doing wrong. I'm sure there's going to be somebody that does it. So let me start off with just showing you how I'm going to set this up so that it looks pretty even. When I actually sketched this out, I used a graph paper. And what I did is I counted out each letter line segment, and I wanted the spaces and everything to be pretty much exactly the same, which when you're designing typography is kind of a double-edged sword. Number one, there are optical illusions in lettering that you need to move things closer or farther apart so that they look the same, but I'm using a block type that's really going to be quite straight edged and pretty straightforward. So I wanted everything to be pretty unified, and that's why I kept this look. I used the graph paper. I sketched everything out, and then I copied it onto this paper just with a light table. So that's why I'm gonna set up a grid now and kind of figure out where I want to place everything. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is bring in some circles. So you can come over here and you can actually use L on your command, or you can just click on the ellipsis tool and drag these out. And I'm just gonna get a basic outline of what I'm doing. Sometimes when I do this stuff, I just want to see if it's gonna work. So I don't really want to put too much time into this and figuring out exactly what it's gonna look like, because I might end up in the middle of it go, nah, it's not really working for me. So usually what I do is I just kind of quickly set up how I'm gonna make it look, and then I work from there. So we'll do that, and we'll bring this guy over here. Okay. So what I'm gonna do a lot is you'll see me toggle back and forth between outline view and regular view. And you can do that by hitting Command Y, and it'll bring you back and forth, which is super duper helpful when you are doing this type of stuff that's overlaying other things. And again, you can do the same thing by just hitting Command and then clicking on that, but it's a lot quicker if you just use Command Y. So when you do that, you can actually look at it and say, okay, now I need to move this stuff over here. So this type of topography, everything's going to be exactly the same. Every line is going to look exactly the same. Everything's going to be straightforward. So keep in mind that, like I said, I know that there are optical illusions that you can kind of get into. I'm not going to concern myself with any of that right now. Again, because I'm just kind of trying to get a good idea of what it's going to look like. Now I like this one because the G and the D look similar, and you can actually reverse them. And when you're doing these types of kind of logo typography-ish type of custom stuff, you're going to want to, well, at least for me, I shouldn't say you're not, you can do whatever you want. I personally like the symmetry of typography when it's designed for certain things. There are a lot of reasons why you don't want to do this, but I like the idea of keeping these things pretty similar. One big thing is the G and the D are going to look pretty much exactly the same. The R and the N look the same. Like I've tried the ligatures here, and maybe I'd bring them down or kind of play around with them. So I mean, these kind of end pieces might look the same. I might try to do a little, a little dig in here and see if it still looks the same. I like the eye in the center. I played around with a lot of different ideas, but these two kind of worked. I had one that was like maybe a sword right here or something. The cool thing is when you're dealing with certain things, certain logos, or at least certain type pieces, that everything, when you're trying to do something symmetrical and everything is already pretty symmetrical as it is pretty neat. It's kind of fun when they kind of line up like that, considering that this is a 5-letter word, so you can always have two letters on one side and 2 letters on the other, and the center letter is I, which is another really good thing to have. So yeah, I mean, it really does help out quite a bit. So I'd also like to say that I 100% haven't done a script or anything for this. I'm just winging it as I'm going, so I might swear. I'm super unprofessional, so I might swear. Sorry if there's any little kids that are listening to this. Santa isn't real, so but just keep in mind, like I said, I just wanted to fill you in on how I do things. And if you don't like it, or if you hate my voice, then oh well, I guess. You will hear me drink occasionally. I do have some coffee here, so I apologize for the people that are listening to this headphones and they're creeped out by that. So here is basically what I'm going to start with. Now I got this line to be pretty great, and this line's obviously just a mirror of that. And we're going to come in, and I think what I'm going to do, now that I've already kind of plotted out exactly, in the sketching phase, and again, the sketches that I've done in here are actually pretty refined in comparison to what I normally do. I had an idea that I was going to share this with people, so I did make it look a little bit nicer. I am the worst at sketching things, so I figure out a lot of stuff in Illustrator or Photoshop. I don't really do a ton of pencil work, so they do look a little bit nicer than I usually do. But we'll get started on figuring out what we're doing here. So we're gonna do a grid, and I might stop talking while I do this. I can't quite focus and do two things. But when you take an object like I just did, and if you click on the object and it highlights it, and you go ahead and you drag and hold down Shift and Option at the same time, it'll stay in the same line, which is nice, and it'll also duplicate it. So now that I've held down Shift and Option at the same time, it drags the whole thing over to here. And that can come in handy when you're doing things like this, or especially with typography. More specifically, when you're doing typography, you're going to be using these two quite a bit. I actually, in Illustrator, I believe, when you're using Illustrator, actually I'm not sure. I don't know if I set this on. Yeah, I think maybe it's just automatically. So in Illustrator, if you want the black arrow, which is kind of used to select everything and move everything around on your page, or if you want to use the more specific Command A on your, well, actually it's not Command, you just hit A. But yeah, I'm starting to ramble here, so I'm just gonna tell you that you're not gonna use this as much. You're gonna use the white arrow tons. I use it all the time, and it comes in handy tremendously for me. But whatever floats your boat, I guess. So what we're gonna do is just make sure everything lines up. What can help you as well, just to let you know, is if you go into View, go down to Guides, and again, there's a command for that, but I'm just gonna show you the long way around. If you go into View and then go to Smart Guides down here, Command U. If you click on that, what actually can happen, which is really nice when you're doing typography, you need things to be exact. It's nice to have this tool because you can actually drag and it'll lock. See how it kind of locks into place there? And it'll lock when you hold down Option Shift into that, so it's exact. And that's kind of nice when you're doing this type of stuff. So I'm just gonna expand this out, and again, there are other ways to do this, but this is the way that I'm doing it. So now I'm usually doing this when I'm talking to my cats, so not talking to my cats, but so this is basically what I'm looking for. And I'm actually going to count out spaces like I did when I was using the graph paper. Because you think when you're doing graph, right, graph work, whoops, doing graph paper looks like this, right? Now what I did is I counted out how many line segments there were going to be. So I went, okay, there's a line here for the R, and then there's going to be a space, and then there's going to be another line for the R. And I did that across the whole thing. So I just went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm going to do that again, but I'm going to do it with, and I'm going to make sure so everything's equal. Now what I'm doing here is I'm going to group all this stuff, and I'm actually going to center it to itself. So I did that so that I could make sure that everything is going to be even. So let's say if I followed this, if I just went with a pen tool and just did everything out, it might not be perfect. And you really kind of want it to be perfect when you're doing typography like this, or you're doing a logo. You want to always have curve precision. You always want to make sure that everything looks good and that either you use the least amount of anchors that you can possibly. If you go in there and you live trace it, or if you do other things, it's going to look like garbage. So take your time. Honestly, it pays off tremendously. I mean, honestly, it's way more worth it to take your time and really work on something really slowly and take your time. Okay, so just keep that. So again, sorry. I'm taking. Okay. So here we go. We have our things. We're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna count these with you and aloud. So if you want to learn your 1, 2, 3s. So let's see here. I think. Yeah, I think I'll let's do this one while we're working on it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So we have 17 um, lines that we're going to have put in here with spaces. Now again, you're going to tweak this, you're going to play around with it, so don't get too hung up on everything. But what we can do, since we have the curve here and we actually have all these already lined up, I can get rid of that because I kind of know what I'm going to do already. So everything should line up pretty well. But let's just try it with just this, and I'm not even going to look at the other thing. And again, it might be a disaster. I have no idea. So you'll also when you're using when you're doing typography, you're going to really use Pathfinder. It's tremendously helpful cutting out things and creating shapes, especially if you do logo design. I use negative space a lot. I use divide and separate and trim constantly. I actually have actions for these because I use them so often. And I would recommend creating custom actions for stuff, or at least custom commands for things. Just because if you use them a lot, it's going to save it time. All right, so everything's lined up pretty perfectly. I'm actually going to count these again. Just okay, so we're going to highlight everything here. And usually what I do, I hate destroying things. So even this base that I have right now, I would not want to destroy that. So I'm actually just going to drag this whole layer. If you click and drag the whole layer, and drag it down and add it to this little page right here, it'll create that exact layer with everything that's on that layer. So go ahead and hide that original one because we want to keep it and we don't want to destroy it. Come up here to your Pathfinder and go ahead, and you can use all these. If you don't like using, if you like to have like a really clean front right here, um, you could just minimize the stuff and just use your command or however. This is how I like to do it. So go ahead and hit divide when you have everything highlighted. Now the cool thing about divide, and I like to use divide other than maybe trim or anything else, is that it cuts everything exactly the way that you see it. So every line that intersects will cut it into its own little shape. You can see that you can drag out each shape if you want to move each individual thing. And it comes in handy when you're doing typography because you can kind of play around with this stuff. So I use it a lot, but obviously you don't have to use that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete all the excess stuff that I don't need. So I know these lines are going to curve, so I don't need any of this excess stuff that's sticking out. Right? And I also know that each one of these lines, right, is going to represent the thick black part of the letter. And every space in between is going to represent just space. So I'm actually going to go ahead and delete every other line. And I'll go back. Oh, no. Yeah, I think I might have. Oh, that's right. I have to add. And I even had to do this when I was doing the. It has to be an even number, you idiot. All right, so it should have been 18. So I'm just gonna head and I'm gonna slide this one over, and we're just gonna do that part again. And this is why you don't ruin the stuff that you started with. So let's go ahead and. Okay. So I had to add an extra one because I know that when I do the deleting of each one, I'm going to want one extra. Okay. So we did the same thing that we just did. We're just going to go ahead and highlight everything. And again, you can use trim, you can use whatever you want. This is just how I like to do it. So again, I don't need to have everyone in the world telling me that I'm doing it wrong or there's a quicker way to do it. You make your own video about it. So again, we're just going to go ahead and delete everything that's basically in the opposite. We go one on, one off. So now we have the basis for what I'm trying to do. Now, what I want to do here, again, is now that I have, oh wait, let's see, G, R, I, N. Well, that's not going to work either. What the hell am I doing wrong? So, okay. I'm doing something messed up. Alright, let's see. Okay. So, oh, okay. Alright. So, I apologize that I just did all that work for no reason at all. And this is what you get for recording it live. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. There is 17 here, 17 vertical spaces that I need to put down. So I'm just gonna head and Control Z until I get back to what I needed to do here. And that's why I love Control Z. Okay, so let's just count these out again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Alright. That should get us where we need to be. Okay. Reason that was not working the way that I wanted it to work. Alright, so let's go ahead and delete that. We'll do this one more time, and hopefully I did something right this time. Okay. Highlight again, and we'll just delete all the extra gobbledygook here. Boop. Shaboop. 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 Okay. There we go. Alright, we're going to do the same thing. Delete every opposite. And you don't have to delete that. Like, you could just change it to white if you wanted to keep it in there. That's fine if that's what you want to do. I'm not here to judge you, nor should anyone. So I actually am thinking about it now, and I like the idea of all these being the same, but I also like the idea of keeping that other circle. So that's another reason why you should always copy and paste, because what you can do here, in like duplicating the layer, is all of that stuff is right on top of. So if you look at it, if you look at the whole thing, if you basically take, this layers palette, instead of having a visual representation on top of each other, what I like to do is if you laid the whole thing down, if you somehow took the computer and you laid it down like it was a piece of cake, you would be able to see, and I'll just do this just to kind of show you guys, you'd be able to see each layer on top of one another. Now we went in, and this is the base layer, which is coinciding with this layer, and this is the second layer over here. And this one has things taken out of it, right? So we have little things taken out of it. But what if after I'm done editing this, I've moved some stuff around, and I still want to use this line, but I want it to be represented right here in the same place. Now, if I edited this whole thing, I'd have to go back and do Command Z the whole way. Now, I don't want to do that. Now, if I have an unedited version of that layer right here, I can actually just come in and drag it onto this new layer and say, okay, now I have that exact line where I originally wanted it. That might be a little bit abstract for someone that's just casually looking at it, but people that play with Illustrator a lot will definitely understand. That's how I visually represent it in my brain, that instead of looking at the layers because it's kind of tough when you're looking at it this way. They give you a representation of it in front of you. If you took the whole computer and you laid it down and you actually thought about it as layers of a cake, it becomes a little bit easier to understand. But so yeah, that's why I don't do any editing, just in case I want to come back and use this circle for something, which I am going to use. It is nice to have this circle sitting here, and I can use that curve again. So, and I probably will. But one thing that I did like about this was that these little sharp edges that come out. Now, I'm not sure how I want to do this. I have two options here where I can actually come in and edit each individual one, or I can draw them with a pen tool. I think what I'm going to do for the first, kind of iteration of this, and again, we're going to do a bunch of them, so we're going to keep playing with it until we like it, or at least till I like it. You don't really have a say in this, so you're just listening to this going, oh my god, this guy's an idiot. But you know what? Oh well. So we're going to come in and, like I said, we're going to use that circle that's already here. Well, it's not really a circle, but we're going to use this, and I'm just going to hit Command-C and copy it. And I did make two different versions of this, just to let you know. And like I said, I hate editing something, because I'm actually going to come on and start editing this side. So we're going to paste, and if you just hit Command copy and then Command paste on a new layer, it will do it right above, directly above it. So a lot of times what people do is they might try to copy and paste on this layer and then they move it over to get it where it needs to be. Don't bother doing any of that. If you just come in here and you want this particular one, you want it exactly where it is, just hit Command-C and then go up to this layer, delete that, and then hit paste. Oops, I'm sorry. Command-F, and it'll drop basically right on top of the other one. So Command-C, Command-F really are the best way to go, instead of Command-C, Command-V, which, like you just saw, paste it wherever. I think it's the center of the screen is where it is. Command-C, Command-F is the way to go. Just do a stretch, guys. Oh, I slept kind of weird last night. And my internet's down, and this is actually the reason why I'm doing this video, is that my internet is down at my house. I live in a very rural area of northern New Hampshire, and my internet goes down a lot, so my internet was down, and I said, you know what, let's make a little video, because I'm bored, so, and I can't communicate with any of my clients, so there's that. Little backstory. And no one is laughing at that, so awesome. Alright, so we copied this into this layer, and what I want to do, since we're going to be making the letters out of these, and I liked the idea of having these kind of sharp little corners here, I'm just going to actually turn this into a stroke, which is if you come over here and you flip that little guy, little arrow down over here, it actually will create the opposite of both of these. So like I said, if you're new to Illustrator and you're wondering what I'm doing, I'll try to explain the best that I can. If you're really into Illustrator and you're like, oh my god, this is so remedial, I do apologize. I'll try to make the end part of this more for you, but the beginning part of it, I just want to kind of keep it up to speed. So go ahead and go into your stroke and then up the weight point. I don't know, since we're doing a logo, go by whatever your eye says. I mean, I'd probably stay around 8 or so. Yeah, I think so. And I think what I'm gonna do, because this is gonna be a G, so I'm just gonna try to plot everything out. And I'm gonna do the same thing with this other circle. I'll do the same thing at the bottom. So again, go back to your original layer, Command-C, Command-F. And a cool quick thing to do, if you're ever in one of these and you want to make it exactly like that without going, if you ever highlighted an object and like these two circles are different. And these two circles are different. Cool quick way to do it is just to hit I on your keypad, and it brings up your eyedropper. And as long as you have this selected, whatever you hit the eyedropper on, it'll take those properties. So you hit it, and it's got the same stroke, and it looks the same. If I want it to be just black, just select it there, and again, boom, like that. So it's a little quick tip. All right. So now that I have my plot points, what I'm actually going to do to make sure that everything is the same is I'm going to test out how it looks if I go ahead and do this. So what I want to do is basically, like I was telling you, I hate destroying things. So a lot of times what I do is I actually just use shapes like triangles or squares, and I white it to whatever the background color is so that I can make it disappear. Now, I haven't destroyed anything. It's just basically sitting here on its own little block, and I can put it where I want to put it, and I somehow have this perfect little thing that, you know, you can still play around with. Let's say I want to move that a little bit closer, this and that. And I like doing that because I'm not destroying anything. And you know, I think it looks okay. I'm not super impressed with it, but I'm gonna try it out and see how it looks. So I'm gonna actually do it to all of these. And so this is gonna be a G. So what I'm gonna do, actually, a fun way to do it, and I'll show you these things after the fact, after I think of them. If I was thinking ahead, I probably would have had a more, you know, structured thing. But it's like, let's say you've deleted past a certain point, right? And I'm using smart guides, so it is locking into place, which is kind of nice. And it does show you, if you can see the green arrow here, this is the center of this square, which is gonna come in handy because I want to make sure that this, oops, let me actually just change these so that you can see them. Okay. So I want to make sure that the center of this space is exactly the center of where this rectangle is going to be. Now the reason I want to do that is because when I'm creating this as a logo or typographic element, I want to make sure that this center is exactly the same everywhere. So a good thing to do, like I said, when you're using smart guides, is it'll actually show you where this is. But back in the day, I didn't have smart guides, so I didn't really use these all that often, but you can use them now. Like I said, if you just hold down Shift and you slide this across, it'll actually line up, and you can see that's the exact center of this square. So if you ever want to find that out, and let's say, like I said before, if you deleted this, which I had, that smart guide doesn't have anything to lock onto. See how there's no center? So it doesn't know where the center of this, you know, of this thing is, because there's no objects in here. It's just a deleted space. So that's why I created this square in the center here, so that when I drag it across, it'll say, oh, okay, the center is right there. And that's how you know that the exact space between this side and this side is the same, and this side and this side is the same. So that's why I wanted to do that. And you can do the same thing if you want to just slide this across, and you can do the same thing to all of these. This isn't how I would have done it, but like I said, this is just kind of flying by the seat of my pants type of thing. So I'm just going to show you how, you know, if I had stumbled into this predicament on my own, how I'd kind of figure out a way out of it. But that's how I do these, and that's how I'm going to figure out how each one of these has their own little line in between them. And again, we're going to change this, so keep in mind, I'm just trying to show you how I do it. Now I'm deleting those centers because I don't really need them anymore. And I'm just going to slide these down. Right. Now this is going to be a G. I'll delete that as well. And another quick tip. Actually, you know what? I think this one I made up, to be honest. It's one of the hotkeys. What I do a lot is I'll select an object like this. And what you can do, the way that I set it up, is you can actually come in here and hit select, same, fill, and stroke. Now you can see there's a command here, but that's not going to be the same as yours because I created that own command for myself because I use it a lot. So you can use whatever you want. You can go into, actually, I won't go into how you create commands. You can figure that out, Google it. It's super easy, but it's really, actually it's really quite easy. You just go into edit and then go to keyboard shortcuts, and it'll bring up a panel that shows you every keyboard shortcut that you can have, and it'll show you if you do menu commands or tools. I use this thing a lot to create my own little things, so learn it. It'll help you out a lot. All right, so yeah, go ahead and you can select whatever the object is, and I'm going to select all these so that they look like the background here, so they kind of disappear. And I use Shift Command 2. That's what I do, and like I said, that's a quick command, so you can create whatever you want with it. Again, we hit the eyedropper, and we'll select the background. Now, that looks pretty decent. It's not exactly what I was going for, but a lot of times when I'm doing this type of stuff, I just kind of go with what's happening. I'm not going to fight this. It looks kind of neat, and so I'm just going to go with it. So we have a G that I need to make, and I'll come back here and just take a look at G. Okay. So again, we're making letters, and the reason that I did all of these is so that I can delete the ones that I don't want anymore. So again, the G has a solid one that goes through it, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete that one. Solid one goes to the bottom here. Alright. Now the way that I drew this was a sharp edge here and then a little bit of a curve here. So I think what I'm going to do, since I want it to be pretty much perfect, I'm actually going to select this. I'm going to do copy, Command C, oops, Command C, Command F, and then if you select it again and hold down Shift, actually, you know what? It'd be easier if I just do this. I might have made too many copies of this. All right. So Command C, and then what I do to make it quick, just to let you know, when I copy something and paste it in front of it, hold down Command and then hit CF, and that copies in front, a version of that right there. So once it's in front, I select it and you hit R, which will bring up the rotation, which you can see over here, and it's the rotate tool. Once you're in that, you can basically select where you want it to rotate. And what I like to do is hold down Shift again, and it'll keep it to a certain point. As you can see, it only moves it, I think, at 45-degree increments. So it actually shows you the degree right here. So I'm gonna bring it to a 45-degree angle, and the reason that I want to do that is because I want this angle to be perfect. So that's why I'm holding down Shift, and I'm moving this copied piece rectangle in front to a 45-degree angle, and I'm letting it go. Alright, so now that I have this is all I'm concerned about. This angle right here needs to be 45 degree, it needs to be perfect. And again, we're making everything perfect. That's the point of this. It's not to just take the pen tool and draw what I already did, because for me, in this particular style, what I want it to be is perfect. So again, if you don't like it, then you don't have to listen to what I'm saying. But now what I'm doing now to keep continuity is I'm erasing both of these sides that are going to cross over here. So essentially what I want to do is cut this out. And again, I don't want to delete anything. So if I show you, if I did this, right, with the rectangle, it would look like that. Now I don't want that. So that's why I deleted, I just took my eraser and I just cut these down. You can do it a ton of different ways. I went and did that. You could just take the eraser and make it super big and just delete it like that. You could do, I'm not gonna get that. You could do a bunch of different things. That's just what I did. Okay, so again, we're just on our way to creating a cool looking G. And what I can do now is create the angle that's right here, which is that 45-degree angle. And what I want to do is go ahead and hit Command Y and bring us back to this line part of it. And what you can do is go ahead and zoom in. And you can do this again. This is another thing. You can do a bunch of different ways, but I'll just show you the way that I would probably do it. Is when you're using smart guides, it'll show you where the intersection is. See how it says path and then intersect? And what you want is the one that says intersect, and you're just going to click there when you have the pen tool. Remember, it's very important that you have the pen tool. Hold down Shift. Now when you do that, oh, I just add. That's okay. So here's what we're gonna do. Here's what we're gonna do. I think it'd actually be kind of cooler if we did it a different way. So I'm gonna do the same thing that I did before to get the center line here. So I'm actually gonna bring up rulers. So if you hit Command R, that brings up ruler. And I use the rulers a lot when I'm doing this type of stuff because obviously I want it to be pretty perfect. But again, we wanted to find the center of this area. So what did I do? I created a rectangle. And now you can see, if you select this box, it shows you the kind of center points. Now what I want to do is zoom in as best I can. Click on the ruler over here, drag a ruler over, and then plop it right there. So now I can actually go in and delete that and see this ruler that's here is exactly in the center. Now what I want to do, again, you don't need to know what I just did there because it doesn't really matter. It's just my own personal OCD thing. But go ahead and select that center guide, hold Shift, and then it'll come up here in exactly a 90-degree angle. And that's what we want. And you could have done this a bunch of different ways. Like I said, I'm not here to show you the myriad of ways that you could do stuff. I just want to get you to understand how I do it. Now I do want a little bit of flair in here, so I am going to bring this shape down a little bit more. You know, I kind of want to make it look kind of neat, but I think I did way more on the sketch, yeah. So the sketch is a little bit different. It's a little bit of an oval, and then it kind of goes down. And I don't know, I kind of like this, so I'm going to stick with that for right now until I have something else that I want to do, I guess. I am going to see, though, because I want to create the ending to this like that. But I don't want to just drag it up there and just say, okay, that's good enough. My eyeball says, yeah, that's fine. What I want to do is create it so it's exactly the same as all the rest of these. So, an interesting way to do that, and again, there are a ton of different ways to do it, but you can just slide this over here and take this square and reduce it. And again, we're doing the same thing. We're just basically figuring out the metrics of this by dividing everything and finding the center. That's really how you do it. So in carpentry, you can do the same thing, and that's how I kind of think about it sometimes, as these things are blocks of wood. So if I wanted to make lats in like a deck, the lats need to be spaced apart the same way that these would be spaced, and they need to be exact. So what we usually do, or what a carpenter does, is they create a block of wood that is this exact same size. Alright, so that when they're putting the lats on, they don't need to measure every single one. All they need to do is put this lat down, right? And then they grab this piece of wood, they put it down in between, and then they take another lat and they put that lat, and then they put that lat down, and then they nail that on, then they move on to the next one, they put this one down. So that's kind of how I think about it. And so that's how this works. But so what I basically did there is I moved this one up to the center part, and then I measured this space in here. And you can measure, there's a measuring tool in Illustrator if you want to measure it, write down the measurement, and then, you know, go into your square and then do the inches or the pixels or whatever you have selected. You're more than welcome to get that into it, but I'm not going to bother to do any of that stuff. I'm just going to, you know, do a quick measurement, and then what I'm going to do is slide this over here, this one up to the center part, and then again, we're using Smart, so they're locking you pretty well. There's a measuring tool in Illustrator, and then drag this over, write down the measurement, and then, you know, go into your square, and then do the inches. Now this space you have selected from here to here, but I'm not going to bother to do any of that. Is exactly the same as this space. Do a quick now it might look a little bit different because it's a different angle on that oval than this one is. So this one might look a little bit shorter, but technically it's exactly the same, and that's what we want. So so yeah, I mean that's just what I want. It doesn't mean that's what, you know, should happen or anything. From here to here, but I'm not right here is exactly the same. Now you start to see what that it mostly looks like an arm, which is neat. And that's kind of the other reason why we're doing this, is so that I can play around with these letters and see what works. And like I said, you can play around with that. So let's go into the R. And again, like I said, I toggle a lot back and forth. I do see through this stuff a little bit easily. So I have done this in a while, and if you want to make it perfect, you can make a grid that's exactly the same. It mostly looks like a round, which is neat. Go right ahead. That's kind of the other reason why we're doing this. So here's this, and we got this line that's going to come down here and go over. And again, like I said, I toggle a lot back and forth. So I do see through this stuff a little bit easily. So I have done this in a while, and if you want to make it perfect, you can make a grid that's exactly the same. It mostly looks like a round, which is neat. Go right ahead. We're going to do the same thing. So here's this. Cut into this is an exact 45. And what you can do is, once you've selected this, go ahead and just hit Option, and you can drag it, and it'll copy a piece of that without moving this one. And again, I love doing it without, you know, ruining anything. And we're just gonna make R. And I'm gonna eyeball this, mostly because I just want to make sure. So here's this. Cut into this is an exact 45. And what you can do is, once you've selected this, go ahead and just hit Option. And then we're gonna make it, and it'll copy a piece of that without moving. Hold down Shift again. I love doing. Look at that, perfect. Now what I'm gonna do is hit I, and I'm gonna come up here and make this line exactly the same way as these are. Now I went over a little bit, and I went over a little bit on purpose. Now the reason, you can do this two different ways. One way to do this is to select this shape and come over here to your stroke panel, and the cap and corner, you're going to switch those to a butt cap and a miter joint. And the reason that you're going to do that is because, as you can see here, you can actually just hit the caps if you want, but I like to do both of them when I'm doing anything, just because if I